Hey everyone, factoring into today's video, doing JMA Friday today, having a look at the weather coming month from a Japanese model. It looks like the weather is going to be turning a little bit more unsettled as we go through the start of July. That's on the Japanese model, and I'll show you the charts on that in a moment. Could see a bit of a deterioration. Whilst it's not been great, I mean it's been quite cool, but it's been fairly dry through June so far, but we could be seeing signs of a bit of a change to wetter conditions for early July on today's Japanese update, but I'll show you the charts in a moment. Also have a quick look at what's going on with the current situation with the thunder, but before I get on with that, just to say about the ads listening to articles on all the pages at Gazservices.com, have a browser widgets, any articles that you're interested in, please click through, you'll be able to go off and read those articles, and thanks very much for doing that. So very quickly, the radar picture from the weather outlook. There's not a great deal going on, things have gone quite calm through this morning. I've got a few heavy showers around Oxfordshire, but the main area of rain and thunder is still in the channel coming out of northern France. Let's see if there's any lightning in with that. If you have a quick look at the lightning detector, there's not a great deal of lightning to be seen there, so at the moment we aren't generating lightning and thunder, but I think things will develop through the course this afternoon, and there will be some big thunderstorms breaking out later on this afternoon. If I've got time, I'll have a look at the situation on Stormwatch later on this afternoon. Right, let's have a look at the JMA charts for the coming month. These are 500 millibar heights, broken down into weekly periods. The first week period will take us from the 12th to the 19th of June. Blue extrapolates to low pressure and yellow extrapolates to high pressure. So what we see for the coming week is that we're going to have a ridge very close to the UK and centred just out to the west, and then we've got troughs of low pressure up to the north and out to west of the country. That's the same pattern that we've had for a significant amount of time, actually. The jet stream is going rather like that. So it's a bit cool, and also fair amount of dry weather, not a washout of the period by any means, but it's driest in the south and it's most unsettled up in the north as that jet stream sort of niggles in from off the Atlantic. And of course, with the air coming from a west to northwesterly type direction, that's why the temperatures aren't exactly all that exciting. As we go through to the next weekly period, this one taking us from the 19th to the 26th of June, we find a trough of low pressure up to the northeast and a ridge out in the central part of the land. So that's very similar, although perhaps signs that the ridge is pulling away a little bit out into the central part of the Atlantic, so the jet stream is perhaps covering more parts of the country with that one. And up to the northeast, close to that trough of low pressure, it could perhaps be turning a little bit more unsettled. That is quite a cool scenario as well, because between the trough over Scandinavia and the ridge in the central part of the Atlantic, it will be bringing the air and the jet stream down from the north to northwesterly type direction. So probably turn a little bit cooler, a little bit more unsettled through towards the final week of June. That could be a transitional period though, so maybe not starting off too bad. But I think there's signs there that the high pressure is pulling out in the central part of the Atlantic. And then as we go through to the last 2-week period, this takes from the 26th of June through to the 10th of July. That's the change I was talking about at the start of the video. The signs there that the above average heights of high pressure going a long way out in the central part of the Atlantic. We've got blue colours right over the top of the country, that's a trough of low pressure, and some sort of ridge of high pressure is over across Eastern Europe. So the jet stream with that goes rather like that. And it places us under a trough of low pressure, and that could be quite unsettled. There could be more in way of rain coming up with that. We could draw up southerly winds, so I'm not sure if it would be all back to cool. Actually, it could be relatively warm, but we're under a trough there within the 500 millibar flow, so I think it is signals anyway. As we go through to the start of July, we probably turn things more unsettled. That's the northern hemisphere view. This is the JMA mid-latitude view. Again, 500 millibar heights broken down into weekly periods. So the first week period takes us from the 12th to the 19th of June. The British Isles is just here in the top right-hand corner of the chart as you're looking at it. The temperature forecast for the coming week is cooler than average, although nearer normal down in the south and southeast, but cooler than average in the north and the west. And the rainfall forecast here is coming out a little bit below average, so just backs up what we're seeing on the first chart really, that it's a relatively dry period, but the temperatures are on the cool-ish, not particularly cold, but on the coolish side. As we go through to the second weekly period, this one's placing that ridge out into the central part of the Atlantic, of course, starting to push it away from us into the mid-Atlantic. We see that the temperatures, again, are coming out cooler than average, probably turning a bit cooler in the south. Actually, in the south, it's going a bit below average through that period as the jet stream starts to come back in from the northwesterly direction. And the rainfall forecast is still holding up reasonably well, still coming out a little bit drier than average. And then as we go through to the final 2 weekly periods, and remember this one takes us into July, so the 26th of June through to the 10th of July. What we find for this one is that the trough is being placed over the country, if you remember, with the ridge going a long way out into the middle part of the Atlantic. So that is a definite deterioration, certainly in the pattern anyway, as we go through to the start of July. So the temperatures are coming out significantly cooler than average, very cool period being sealed there through to the start of July. And the rainfall is going a bit above average then, so that's just indicative of that trough coming back as we start to push the rainfall a little bit above average. So signs, certainly from the JMA, of a deterioration in the pattern as we go through into the start of July. That's for JMA. This is the CFS model for the coming month. Again, same idea, 500 millibar heights broken down into week periods. The first week period is taking us from the 11th to the 17th of June. We have this ridge out to the west of the country for this coming period. The jet stream is going something like that. So it's relatively dry, but a little bit on the cool side. A good representation of what we're just looking at from the JMA. Now, the next weekly period, going from the 18th to 24th, this is when the JMA wants to start to take that high pressure away from us in the central part of the Atlantic, but the CFS wants to keep it very close by. Actually, so that's not too bad at all. Again, it's probably still relatively cool because the main centre of high pressure is still just a little bit to the west of the country, but overall it still is close enough by to keep us very dry through that period. And then the third week, going from the 25th of June through the 10th of July, signs of a change. Then we're not taking the high pressure away in central part of the Atlantic, we are moving it northwards, starting to send it up towards Greenland and maybe over towards Scandinavia. And that probably starts to allow these areas of low pressure to the south and the southwest to begin to move up. Winds will go into the east with that, so it could be quite warm because that's pulling some quite warm air off the continent, but probably turning increasingly unsettled, particularly down in the south, where I think we'd probably be at risk of thunder, actually, and this is covering the Glastonbury period, of course. And then we go through to the last weekly period. This takes us from the 2nd of July through to the 8th of July, so we're into next month with this one as well. And the above average heights again being centred around Greenland and Iceland. Then we've got hints, no more than that, but hints of low pressure to the south. And I think probably bringing in sort of southerly tracking jet stream. So again, there is this idea. It's perhaps not as definitive with the CFS as it is with the JMA, but there is definitely this idea that as we're going through to start of July, there's a change in the pattern. We lose a high pressure from just to the west and either send it into the central part of the Atlantic or move it up to Greenland. Either way, it probably turns cooler, or even cooler, and more unsettled as we go through to the start of July. Not great signals so far for July. The temperatures stack up like this for the next month. So the 11th to the 17th comes out cooler than average in those green colours. The next weekly period, though, with this one, we're going a little bit warmer than average. Look at that, we are lifting the temperatures up just a little bit. That's that high pressure becomes almost centred on the top of the country, so it could be a warmer week there from the 18th to the 24th of June. But it's back to sort of cooler than average conditions as we go through to the next week, the 25th of June, through to the 1st of July. We end June on quite a coolish note. And then the 2nd to the 8th of July shows another cooler than average week, actually turning cooler with the anomaly as we go through into the start of July. You'd expect that because we're lifting the high pressure up to Greenland. Finally, the precipitation forecast stacks up like this. A lot of dry weather through the coming week. Could be some rain down in the south, southwest particularly. That's associated probably with today's thunderstorms. The second weekly period, drier than average as well. So that week from the 18th to 24th looks very nice actually on the CFS. Warmer than average and drier than average. That could be, well, I won't say it could be the best week of the summer, but certainly it could be the best week of June. And then as we go through to the third week period from the 25th of June through to the 1st of July, we come out around average with the rainfall. So it's not wetter than average, but there is an idea that we are turning wetter during that third weekly period as anomalies go from drier than average to near average. But not a desperately wet week. And then as we go through to the 2nd of July through to the 8th, we find that again we've got average precipitation, maybe hinting at being a little bit wetter than average down to the south of the country. The signal isn't all that strong in terms of temperature and precipitation from the CFS. It's not as strong a signal as the JMA, which does want to turn it very cool and wetter as we go through to the start of July. It's not such a strong signal from the CFS, but they are both sort of playing with this idea that there will be a change to cool conditions early July and possibly, won't say any more than that at this stage, but possibly increasingly unsettled and wet as well. So it's not a great monthly outlook, but well, perhaps that week, not this week but next week, not looking too bad from the CFS. That's how it's all looking today. Anyway, these models are all highly experimental, so don't take it too seriously. And that's it for now, doing Weekend Forecast, where if I have time later on, I'll update Stormwatch. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.